In Washington, welcome to the Politics Hour, usually starring Tom Sherwood, but today starring Perry Stein of the Washington Post. Perry, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tom Sherwood is on a well-deserved vacation. Well, I don't know how well-deserved it is, but, well, he's on vacation again, so Perry is filling in for him today. Later in the broadcast, we'll be talking with the newest member of the D.C. Council, just sworn in yesterday, I think, or this morning, Robert White. He is an interim at-large member of the council. We'll also be talking with the general manager and chief executive of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, Paul Wiedefeld. He joins us in studio. Mr. Wiedefeld, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kojo.
But before we get to Metro, Perry, apparently there is some lack of clarity about what's going on with the Ron Brown College Preparatory High School, the all-boys high school in the District of Columbia, because it would appear that for a while the ACLU thought that the all-male policy of the school had changed.
Right. The ACLU has been slamming this all-boys school from some time now, saying that it violates federal and local laws by excluding girls. So they've been pushing for a policy, an admissions policy. They've asked it from the D.C. Attorney General's office. And last week they had a phone conversation with them. Whatever happened, the ACLU, after, issued a press release saying the admissions policy had changed. D.C. quickly pushed back and said that wasn't the case. It hadn't changed. But it appears what happened, according to the ACLU, is they asked if a girl could put their name into the lottery to apply to that school. D.C. said there is no policy telling girls they could not go into the lottery. But since no girl has ever applied to this all-boys school, last year was the first year that it existed, it's unclear what would happen if a girl did apply.
I'm saying that we're pretty soon, I'm sure, going to find out about that, because this controversy itself is likely to result at some point in the near future in a girl applying to that school, and then we'll have to see what decision is made.
Yeah, the ACLU said they would exhaust all possibilities. So to me, that implied that they would be willing to put a lawsuit forward, which would mean having a girl apply and seeing what would happen.
We will indeed see what will happen. If you have questions or comments for the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of WMATA, the General Manager of Metro, Paul Wiedefeld, call us at 800-433-8850. You can go to our website, kojoshow.org, watch the live video stream there, ask a question or make a comment. Send us an email to kojo@wamu.org or a tweet at Kojo Show. Paul Wiedefeld, first, there was a lot of Metro news this week, including a stopped Red Line train stuck for nearly an hour, from which at least 2 passengers apparently self-evacuated, and the Washington Post reported that the dispatcher was unable to reach the train operators by radio. What happened?
Basically, we were in a single tracking operation. The train was basically holding for that. There was some communication issues apparently, but we're going to find out exactly what happened. I'll be coming out with a timeline of that whole event, so we know exactly what transpired during that whole time. The only thing I do want to caution, and I can't stress this enough, is do not leave that train. The risk of leaving that train is tremendous with the power that's down in those tunnels. So we got to find out what happened here, and we'll be very transparent about what happened and lay that out. If there were any issues, either from a management side, from a technical side, whatever those were, we'll address them. But let's find out let's get all the facts on the table first.
There have been complaints very often from passengers about the public address system not working properly on trains, and now we have this where apparently the radio dispatch system may have gone down for a while. The dispatcher was not able to contact the train operator. Is that a function of the age of the system also?
No, I don't think so. I mean, part of it is, as you know, we're coming in with we're actually coming in with a new radio system. We're working on that now. That will take years, though, just so you do know. But any radio system I've ever been involved with in my career, there are dead spots in the system, and that's just a reality of it. So I don't know if that was the case in this situation or not, but we'll find out what it was.
800-433-8850 is the number. You can send us email to kojo@wamu.org. The longest Safetrack surge began yesterday, 42 straight days on the Orange Line. We're now in the 8th surge of the Metro Safetrack maintenance plan, and progress reports are out on the first 7. How are things going?
They're going well. I think we have to keep it in perspective of what we're up against, and you look at where we were and to what we've done in these first 8 Safetrack initiatives. As I've said, I wish they were all 100% when we finish. They're not, and there's things that we want to do, but by and large, the vast majority of the work is done very well, and basically we are starting to build that state of good condition that now we can just maintain what we have out there rather than rebuilding, in effect, what we have out there.
You've proposed cutting back service beyond Safetrack permanently, in particular late-night service. Ultimately, it's up to the board to decide, but you say it's necessary. Why?
Well, let me just be clear. I'm in the transit business. We want more riders. We want more service. We want more time. That's exactly where we want to be. But we also have to face what we're up against. In 1998, we had 25% more time than we do today, pre-Safetrack, to do the maintenance work. Since that time, we've gotten 20 years older, but we've added 40 more miles of track that has to be maintained. We've added 15% more stations that have to be maintained. We've moved 65% more trains, in effect, on the use of the tracks. And we went from a 2 and 4 consist trains to 6 and 8, which is much heavier. So, those are just facts that we have to deal with. But we've got to get to the point where we have a system where we just basically maintain it, and then we start to basically expand hours and increase service in general. So that's our goal. And the goal is not to restrict service, it's to grow service. But we can't do that until we're very comfortable that it's safe and reliable.
The public is now being given a chance to weigh in on the options for reduction of service. What are the options?
Basically, they range from it's really trying to deal with the shoulders of the time. And do we, at the far extreme, do we just maintain the 3 a.m. closures? And what does that do then, obviously, to Saturday and Sunday service? Or do we tweak around that? So one option is to stay open until 1 a.m., and the others are to close at 12 and make some other changes in the morning and on weekends. But by and large, it's trying to deal with the basic issue of it's been repeated numerous times by FTA, NTSB, peer reviews we've had, is that the state of the system, you do not have enough time to get it to where it needs to be.
Well, we got a tweet from Sahar who says the elimination of late night service hurts working class people working in the service industry. Will this be restarted? You 40 elected officials in Montgomery and Prince George's County sent you a letter asking that some form of late-night service be restored. Late-night service, as our tweeter indicates, is particularly important to many low-wage workers. What is your response to those concerns?
Sure, that's one of the options is to give them 1 a.m. I think that starts to get at some of that issue. We also will be looking at bus alternatives through some mitigation through that. So I think, again, I'm not permanent maybe is a little bit too strong of a word, but I think in terms of until we get this system to where we need it to get to, I think we need to do this.
Perry, anything you wanted to add? If not, I'm happy to go to a caller because they're ready.
I had a question about the radio, going back to the broken radio.
Sure.
A year and a half ago in the fatal Yellow Line incident, the radio also wasn't working. What has happened in the year and a half? Why is it still not working? And I know you said it's going to be a few years until we get a full new system, but have improvements been made?
Right. I don't. I'm not sure it wasn't working. Again, let's find out the facts and see what we have there before I leap to that. I just don't know if that's the total case yet. Let's see what we have there. We had some other people down there in that area, and their radios were working fine. So it could have been any number of things, but let's find out what really happened there first. Basically, a lot of it's been the protocols on the radio was part of the issue a year ago, so that was part of it. But the reality is we have a very old system. In fact, we're being asked by the FCC to get off of that channel. In effect, we have to create a new channel. So to do that, literally, we have to hang cables to the entire system, and that takes time and/or it hits service, because literally you have to shut down service to hang those cables. And unfortunately, unlike the cell phone coverage, which we are also hanging cables for, that can be turned on incrementally between stations. The radio system cannot. Basically, you have to have a totally redundant system before you flip it over. So that's why the entire system has to be done before that dries the time for that.
And from radio to Wi-Fi, here's Joe in Rockville, Maryland. Joe, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, first I wanted to thank Mr. Wiedefeldt for trying to make up for decades of neglect. It's something we need to do in other public utilities, public use utilities. The question is, I really appreciate the expanse of Wi-Fi and a few pilot sessions that we have. And I wanted to know what we as the public can do to help that particular beta and help get that Wi-Fi service be something even through the tunnels and the rest of the system for our safety usage and information usage, as well as an extra redundant channel for all of the work that you're just discussing now.
What kind of cooperation or assistance can you use from the public in that effort?
I mean, just so you know, you do have access to your phone in the stations. We are doing the pilot for the Wi-Fi. I think it's been received very well, so we'll be taking a look at that and expanding that. I think just by and large, anything that the public can do to support the agency overall, as we try these different initiatives, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's some of the things we've done on the fare structure, for instance, with the University Pass, for instance, those are things that we need public support for, because eventually it goes to the board, and they need to know that it's supported.
In case you're just joining us, that is Paul Wiedefeldt. He is the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. My co-host today is Perry Stein. She's a co-host, she's guest analyst, she's resident analyst, all of the above. She's a reporter for the Washington Post. Later we'll be talking with Robert White, an interim at-large member of the D.C. Council. But if you'd like to join the conversation now, give us a call, 800-433-8850, or send email to kojo@wamu.org. Metro ridership has been falling. It's down around 6% for the fiscal year that ended in June. People assume that it's the Safetrack maintenance plan, but this downward trend has been ongoing for a long time. Ridership actually peaked some 5 years ago. What else do you think is behind the drop?
Sure, I think it's a combination of things. It's been clearly the price of fuel in the most recent years is part of it. The impacts on the federal workforce that have occurred, technology, the way that people basically have lots more options, whether it's Uber or biking or walking. So I think that's all part of it. I do believe, though, that it is a relatively short-term trend, because when you look at the future of this region, it is around Metro. Metro supports the economic well-being of this region, and obviously for those that do not have any access to cars, it supports them. So I think it'll come back very strongly going forward. Most of the development in the 90 percentile occurs within a half a mile of the metro station. You look at it, most anywhere you go in this region, look at cranes, they're around metro stations. So I think that is our future. And you're seeing it on the Silver Line, for instance, is a perfect example with everything that's going out there.
We can't, however, ignore the impact of Safetrack, as well as general concerns about safety and reliability. Ridership fell some 13% in June, the start of the maintenance disruptions. Is there any concern about the impact Safetrack may have on longer-term ridership? Not
longer term. I think what we found with the initial surges that we've done, there is a drop, obviously, but it does pick back up. It does not pick up immediately. It takes about a month or two almost, but we're seeing it rebound. But the larger issue, I think, in terms of safety and reliability, is as we solve that, I think that's what will support the growth of ridership.
We got a tweet from Daniel Robinson. If midnight service is permanently curtailed, will you offer extended bus service instead? And if so, will that service be extended for trips to near suburbs such as Prince George's County? Apparently less than 10% of people so far are switching to Metrobus. Why do you think that is? And is that something you'd like to see increase, according to Daniel's question?
Sure. Yes, we will be coming out with, when we come out for the public hearings and the public outreach, with some different bus plans as well. So we will be looking at that. In terms of the surges and people switching to buses, I think probably the biggest impact that we've seen with the surges is the telecommuting, the starting late, for work, and those are things. What we find is people are still using the system at different times, or they're telecommuting. I think is probably the biggest change.
Here now is Mike in Alexandria, Virginia. Mike, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Kojo. I want to know who's paying for the Safetrack surges, and also what is the plan to hold the various local stakeholders, including Congress, to some sort of account to help pay for this in the future, so we don't end up with this. Because I'll tell you right now, I don't think people are going to be too happy with a fare hike if they have to come up with some more money to keep this thing going forward, just to ride a system that they already don't have a lot of trust in.
Paul Wiedefeldt.
Sure. The combination of the funding is local contributions, in effect, the subsidies that we get from all three jurisdictions. It does come from fares as well. And there are some federal dollars, so that's the combination of the revenues that come in. Obviously, we get money from advertising and things of that sort, but the lion's share comes from the fare box and from the local contribution. So that is the reality how the model works, and will continue into the future. We have been, and the Chairman Evans has been very vocal and very strong on the need for the federal government to stand up and provide more dollars, given that a large portion of the ridership is driven by the federal government.
What kinds of financial pressure is falling ridership putting on the system, and what's being done to address that?
We actually did, obviously, we have to balance our budget, so we did that for 17, and we'll do that for 18. Some of the things that we've done in terms of management side, you may have picked up on that I've actually reduced the workforce by 500 positions. We are doing other things to reduce the cost of the operation to be more efficient, but we will also be looking for new revenue. And so, for instance, you've just seen recently there was an article about the new advertising campaign that we have in our stations with the video screens and things like that, which generate dollars. So we'll continue to do that. Joint development offers of opportunities. So we'll continue to look for revenue, but the core revenue, again, comes from the local jurisdictions and the fare box.
Perry Stein? I'm used to Tom butting in, so it's really different to have to...
So just to clarify on fare hikes, is that a consideration?
Right now, I will be submitting my budget to the board late October, early November timeframe. So I'm looking at all options on the table right now, but I have not finalized that yet.
Are you guys considering that, Uber Pool now is that's the cheapest option for Uber? There are times when, especially if you're in the city core, where taking an Uber Pool is cheaper than using Metro. Is that something you guys are considering? Is that a competition that's could be keeping fares where they are?
It could be. I mean, but at the end of the day, there's so many things that we don't control. So I've got to focus on what we do control. So I can't control what Uber does or Lyft or anyone else. I can't control the price of fuel. But what we can control is the product. And I think if we deliver a better product, we will compete very well.
We got a tweet from Kate who says, can we get a weekly or monthly web-based dashboard that reports on Safetrack maintenance project progress? The public obviously wants to be in on what's going on a regular basis.
Actually, if you go to our Safetrack on Wilmota.com, we do provide that. We do it generally at the end of the surges, so it may be 2 weeks, and obviously this one's a little bit longer, so we'll have to do something in between. But we do in effect an analysis of what we had projected to do and where we stand.
Here now is Giotti in Washington. Giotti, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weidenfeld. They want first thank you for doing what only can be described as a heroic job in the face of tremendous odds. Your focus seems to be on improving the safety and reliability of the system, but I have two other questions which I think needs to be addressed. One is the appallingly poor customer service of Metro employees. I mean, I haven't seen the rudeness in any other service. I've been in this country for 25 years, and I've been in D.C. for 5 years, and it's just getting worse. And the other thing is, I heard on a report on this station that the average wage in Metro is $125,000 per annum. Are you going to do something about these two things? I mean, address...
You feel that Metro workers are overpaid?
If that report is correct, that this average is $125,000, that does seem to me.
Paul Wiedefeld.
Okay, Jati, thank you for the comments. Yes, customer service is a high priority for me. It is something that I think we can do better at. But I also know that I have seen thousands of our employees that do provide very good customer service. So we have to do better, and we have to make sure they understand that is one of their key functions. But I think that I don't think it's a monolithic view of the situation. I think that we have some very good employees that provide excellent customer service. In terms of the wages, the numbers that are being bounced around right now, we make sure that we understand those are what we would call fully loaded. So it includes all benefits and health and things like that. So that's not necessarily pure wages. And that has been the wage structure has evolved over years. It's a negotiated contract. We're in the middle of negotiations now. Obviously, we will have a position on that to try to make sure that we recognize the financial conditions that we're in. But that process will go through the negotiation process and potentially goes to a binding an arbitration board with a binding arbitration decision.
Giotti, thank you very much for your call. An emergency board meeting was called in late August after a number of safety lapses and some scathing federal reports, and there have since been disturbing revelations, including reports of some supervisors handing out pre-signed inspection reports beyond Safetrack repairs. How is WMATA changing what's been described as a lack of a safety culture?
The safety culture obviously is one of the biggest things to tackle. It's something, I wish we could just, flip a switch and we'd be there, but that's not how it evolves. Let me sort of address the first issue. As you may know, there were some issues that as I looked deeper into this that were disturbing to me. So I've actually asked for a investigation by our police department. So that is still underway. And as soon as that is wrapped up, I will let everyone know what we found with that. But I can't comment much further on that. In terms of, in general, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. The second part of your question, Coach.
Beyond Safetrack repairs, how is WMATA changing what's been described as the lack of a safety culture?
Yeah. Again, I think that starts with me. And basically in terms of how I make decisions, so people understand that's what we do. It also starts with all of us to be accountable. What I've stressed to every employee, I meet every new employee. I have met just about every employee that works for us. And what I say to them very clearly is just think of the most vulnerable person in your life and imagine that's who you're doing your job for. And just keep that always in mind, and we will create the safety culture that way.
Perry Stein wants to butt in.
Just in this segment, we've heard complaints about Metro that run the gamut. Do you think Metro, even if you fix everything, will ever be able to escape the ire of the public? And do you think all this criticism currently that we're seeing, is it warranted?
I think
Metro Rage.
Metro Rage, exactly.
I think I'm sure if you called up to a talk show up in Boston or New York or Chicago, you would hear some very similar things. So I think that's part of the territory, and it's it's deserved. If we don't perform, maybe the people are paying the money through taxes and their fares, and they want a good product. And so I understand that we have to do better across the board. So I'm not sure that ever goes away. To me, it's that's just part of the business.
Here now is Nick in Laurel, Maryland. Nick, how should Metro pay for itself?
Afternoon. I've been on the Tokyo, Japan Metro system a few times, and it's one of the best I've seen in the world. It's absolutely covered in head to toe with advertisements. While it was a whole lot of visual stimuli to take in, I ultimately felt it was worth it for the product I received. Would the D.C. Metro consider greatly expanding corporate advertising opportunities to cover that revenue gap?
Paul Wiedefeld.
Yes, we definitely are looking at different options. But I think there's a balance there, though, to be frank, particularly when you look at the architectural elements of some of our stations. I mean, those are iconic stations for a reason. There's a certain look there, and it was designed to do that. It was to represent the nation's capital. So I think we just have to be careful how far we go there.
On now to Diana in Greenbelt, Maryland. Diana, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, hello. First of all, thanks for everything that you're doing. Safetrack is long overdue, better late than never. And I understand there needs to be some disruptions and also curtailed night service. First of all, please return to the night service when all is said and done. That is going to hurt so many aspects of D.C. and as well as the system itself. I think others have made that point. Second point is communicate. I also want to point out that a lot of people with cars choose mass transit. We don't want to participate in the craziness of driving, the madness of all that. It is a horrible experience. So we actively choose and support public transit, and a lot of us do have cars. So it's a choice that is necessary for the sanity of our area, our culture. Third, I travel from Greenbelt into Arlington, Crystal City, where I work. And so therefore I utilize the yellow Rush Plus line that runs all the way to Greenbelt from Virginia. And also the green lines, of course, run to the Greenbelt platform as well. Now, I don't understand why there cannot be communication and clear announcement as to what train it is one is getting on or sitting on. Oftentimes, the announcement is not made until the doors are closing, whether it is the yellow line or the green line. And those of us who need to get on the yellow line want to know what train we are on, either whether it's yellow or green. So I understand this is a problem at other terminals, too. It is not clear as to what train it is on if more than one line runs from that terminal. Why is this so secret? Please address this, and please correct the situation. It just seems so simple. All there needs to be is our announcements made as to what train it is.
Okay, Diana, here's Paul Wiedefeld.
Diana, thank you. And hopefully you've met one of our great station managers, Mr. Van Buren at Crystal City. He's one of our best. He runs a tight ship over there. If you have never met him, I agree with you. We have to do a better job at those terminal points. I've heard this before. We have done some things at some stations. I really think technology is part of the answer there. With electronic signs and stuff that just do that, rather than constantly chasing after the messaging part of it. So I am moving on that, just so you do know.
On to Keith in Washington, D.C. Keith, your turn.
Yes, thanks for taking my call, Kojo. I'm a huge fan of the show.
Thank you.
My question is about safety. During the summer times, we tend to see a lot of increased violence around metro stations, and most recently shootings over at Deanwood Metro Station. What are we going to do as far as increasing police presence at these stations so that commuters like myself won't have to worry about being stabbed on our way to work? I'll take my response off the air.
Thank you. Thank you, Keith, for the comments. Yes, I mean, obviously, the system is a reflection. We are part of the society here. I mean, that's what it boils down to. So we have stepped up police presence there. Actually, I've been there several times, and police are there pretty much around the clock now. We work with the district, has been very helpful with that as well. But there are, as you know, certain parts of this community that are difficult, and issues do arise at time to time.
Same time ridership is falling, costs are rising. A report earlier this week shows that costs are rising. What are the factors driving that rise in costs?
Some of it is labor. I mean, we're 70% more of our budget, just over 70% more of our budget is labor, so that those costs go up. Some of it's under contract. Primarily, it's driven by contractual obligations. Some of the costs of the physical costs of things go up, so that occurs as well. But primarily, it is labor.
Metro Board Chair Jack Evans said a couple of weeks ago adamantly that fares will not be raised, but there are others who speculate that that's virtually unavoidable. Will there be a fare increase amid Safetrack and other issues?
Again, I'll be putting out my final budget in my draft budget in late October.
All right, we'll have to wait until then, I guess, to find out. But speaking of Jack Evans, Bill in Washington, D.C. apparently has something to say in relationship to Jack Evans. Bill, your turn.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Wiedefeld. Good afternoon, Kojo.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Wiedefeld, I was with Chairman Evans a couple of nights ago, and he had a lot of praise for the job that you're doing. But the discussion on Metro eventually got around to the incident at the North Farragut Square station 24 hours previous to that, the conversation I was having with Chairman Evans. And I described the situation where some of the baseball fans and hockey fans had self-evacuated from the train station. And much to my surprise, 24 hours later, he didn't know anything about it. So my question is, really, what are the escalation procedures within your own organization to instill a management fabric of safety?
You asked Jack whether he ever watches the news, but that's another story. Here's Paul Wiedefeld.
Okay. That happened in, as you know, Tuesday evening. It actually, two things did occur, which is exactly what should occur, is the operator did not move the train. They had a red light, and they did not move. As soon as it was known that the doors were open, in effect, the power was shut down, which is exactly what should happen. So that is how it was escalated immediately for the safety of the individuals that could potentially be on the tracks, and to make sure the train doesn't move when it's not supposed to move. So the reality is that happened that evening as we were dealing with that. 5 that morning, if you may recall, we had a potential suicide on the Green Line, and we were dealing with that issue at the same time. So those were the issues we were dealing with, and they were escalated and being dealt with. But I want to find out exactly what happened on Tuesday evening, and I want a timeline of exactly how that all played out, just to make sure that either we did well or we didn't do well, and we have to fix what we did not do well on.
We got a tweet from Unsuck DC Metro, who was a guest on this show yesterday. You're getting too regular now, Unsuck. He writes, since Metro is or will be cutting service, do the jurisdictions get a refund on their spending, and how does that work?
Basically, the jurisdictions put in the dollars. We are looking at, in effect, not enough dollars for 18, so that's what we'll be up against. And the chairman has been talking quite a bit about that, and that's some tough decisions for the board to make coming this fall.
Perry, you got the last question.
Yeah, curious. There's a lot going on, Metro, a lot of projects to fix it. What is your ultimate priority? If you could fix one thing tomorrow about Metro and have it magically fixed tomorrow, what would be the one thing you'd fix?
It would be so that when you got on the train, it would be just like you're getting on an elevator. You wouldn't think about the safety. You wouldn't think about its reliability. You would just get on. You get off the next floor, right? If you're in a 30-story building, that's what you do. Unfortunately, we're not at that stage right now.
Unless you're elevator paranoid, like some friends of mine, but that's another story. Paul Wiedefeld is the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Coming up, Robert White. He's an interim at-large member of the D.C. Council. He's a Democrat. But if you want to hear more about Metro, make sure to check out Metropocalypse. It's a weekly podcast from WAMU 88.5 News, exploring the latest developments, answering riders' burning questions, and finding humor and insight amid our region's commuting nightmares. And mark your calendars, on Friday, October 7th, we will host a debate on the Politics Hour between the candidates running for the U.S. Senate in Maryland. That seat is being vacated by retiring Senator Barbara Mikulski. That debate will feature Democratic Representative Chris Van Hollen and Republican candidate Kathy Lanier. That's coming up on Friday, October 7th, so stay tuned for that broadcast. If you have questions or comments for Robert White, give us a call now, 800-433-8850. He is an interim at-large member of the D.C. Council. He is a Democrat, and you may remember that he won the primary for the at-large race on the D.C. Council. He beat then-incumbent council member Vincent Orange. Vincent Orange has since resigned from the council, and as a result, Robert White was sworn in this morning as interim D.C. Council member, replacing Vincent Orange, whom he beat in the Democratic primary. Robert White, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Kojo. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Interim at-large council member, Perry White is our guest analyst today. She's a reporter for the Washington Post. It was a near unanimous vote, Robert White, but the process was not without a bit of controversy. However, yours was the only name advanced by the D.C. Democratic State Committee for this seat, even though my old acquaintance Anita Bellamy Shelton wanted it. That did not go down well with everyone. Is everyone now on board? Everyone now happy?
I can't speak for everybody being happy, but it wouldn't be D.C. if there wasn't at least a little controversy.
That's
but
how we roll.
It wasn't a major one. I think the Democratic State Committee executive members laid out a strong argument. They said, look, the Democratic voters in D.C. have spoken for who they want to replace the outgoing members, and it would not be prudent of the body elected to represent the Democrats of the city to choose someone different.
Well, the outgoing member, Vincent Orange, said it would be an opportunity for the Democratic State Committee to choose a gay or a Hispanic or somebody who had never been represented on the council before. Do you know if the state committee considered that at all?
Well, he also said a millennial, and I am
Yes.
a millennial. I'm 34, I think. I can't say what the state committee considered, but I think that most people in the city recognize that our council plays a vital role. It is not a hobby. It is not something to do to get your name out. There's incredibly important business and some major bills that are going to come down the pike. And so we need to have a full, strong, deliberative body. And at any point, folks want to be on the council, then you have to do the hard work of running. It is not fun. And so I think the Democratic State Committee did the right thing last night.
You'll be jumping right in. The council session begins Tuesday. There's a lot on the D.C. Council agenda, some of which Perry Stein wants to ask you about.
Yep. Your predecessor, Councilmember Orange, was very known for pushing through liberal worker laws. One of the big ones, just-in-time scheduling. And for those that don't know, just-in-time scheduling is a law that cities throughout the country are considering right now that says companies must give employees a certain amount advance notice of their schedule or face penalties. That kind of petered out towards the end of Orange's tenure. Is that a law that you will be pushing forward, championing like Orange did? There's also
the idea behind just-in-time scheduling is one that I very much support. But what we have to do as a council is to make sure that it is something that is implementable, that works, that will not hurt our economy or the people that we're trying to help. And so I will be spending a lot of time this weekend getting fully caught up on that to see what I'm going to do on Tuesday. But to the extent I have not seen a significant amount of momentum behind this bill the way that I have, but behind paid family leave. And so we're going to be looking, and I think the reality is that if this is something that the council isn't comfortable passing on Tuesday, that doesn't mean that we don't start looking at how we might be able to improve the concept.
That's because the new head of the D.C. Chamber of Commerce hasn't weighed in yet. A shakeup at D.C. General Services Agencies, or GSA, has led Councilmember Mary Che to call for an investigation into whether there's a pay-to-play issue in the way major contracts are awarded. What's your take on it? And as a council member, will you support an investigation? I should also mention that our colleague Janetta Rose Barris has written that, well, the city needs to be taking into consideration what its local businesses contribute to the economy. So this is just not about pay for play.
Well, that's right. I mean, we always do have to take seriously what businesses add to our economy. The business is not this big bad monster. It's a mom and pop coffee shop. It's a lot of things, and so we really have to take a holistic look. But in terms of an investigation, taxpayers do deserve to know what happened at DGS to feel assured that everybody is being treated fairly and equally, and we have to make sure that happens. And as it happens, I spent a lot of my years doing policy for Congresswoman Norton, working on government leases and construction. And so DGS is an agency that I'm particularly interested in.
Do ethics rules need to be changed or clarified to address this ongoing question about pay-to-play politics in the district? There are those who would favor legislation indicated that if a business has a contract or would like to have a contract with the D.C. government, that within a period of years, maybe 2 years or so, that business should not be allowed to make campaign contributions to elected officials in the district.
That's an idea I support. The reason is that we want to make sure that people who participate and who give donations to people running for office, and particularly to elected officials, are doing that because they support the policies and philosophies of that official, and not because they feel like they need some amount of influence. But they also should not feel like they have to contribute to a campaign in order to have someone help them wade through bureaucratic mess. And so we take people out of that uncomfortable situation by having a policy where we don't allow people who do business with the city to contribute to campaigns. I think it just makes everybody more comfortable.
Robert White is an at-large member of the D.C. Council. He joins us in studio. In case you're saying, how did Robert White become a member of the D.C. Council? Well, he was voted in on an interim basis this morning by the D.C. Democratic State Committee because, well, he's a Democrat. Of course, he is running in the general election in November. But if you have questions or comments for him now, give us a call at 800-433-8850. Perry Stein joins me in studio. She is our guest analyst today. Tom Sherwood is off for a couple of weeks. Perry Stein.
Yeah.
Anything else for Robert White?
I'd love to hear you weigh in on police body cameras. The mayor just made an emergency announcement yesterday. This whole idea of police wearing body cameras, the council played a big part in getting that legislation rolled out. Do you think the mayor's announcement was good? The mayor says that police officers and now dispatchers, when they call the police officers, they all have to agree that their body cam is turned on or confirmed.
I think that's exactly right. I'm glad the mayor spoke out on this so quickly. What is the point of having body cameras if we don't have some assurance of when they're going to be on and when they're going to be captured? And so here we have a situation that really illustrates the reason we wanted to have body cameras, and we have an officer that didn't have his camera on. And so it does not meet the intent that the council and the mayor meant for it to have if the body cameras aren't on. So I very much support the move the mayor made.
We've had you on the air talking about the issues most important to you, and education was among your top concerns. You've talked a lot about two DCs and the achievement, what some people now call the opportunity gap. What do you think needs to be done about that?
I think we have to start to look a lot more heavily at early childhood development. I am honestly seeing this in a new way with a young daughter. My first child is 2.5 months old. And, I'm realizing more and more every day that by the time she gets to preschool or kindergarten, so much of her brain will have developed. And so if we're going to equalize the playing field for all kids in the city, then we are going to have to make sure that all kids have these productive and educational early childhood years. But childcare is incredibly expensive in the district. I'm finding that it averages maybe around $1,700 a month per child. At least that's what my wife and I have been finding.
You think that paying that kind of money by the time your child is 3 months old, she ought to at least be reading Langston Hughes, maybe Chaucer by 5 months.
Well, I've told her this is all an investment, and so Dad expects a return on the investment after she finishes college.
Oh, you've told her that at 2.5 months old?
I have told her. I believe in settling expectations early.
What specifically can the council do about that? We already have universal pre-K 3, pre-K 4, which is progressive. What more can the council do?
Well, the same way that the council and then Mayor Gray pushed to provide universal pre-K, we are going to have to start examining if we can develop a universal early childhood education opportunities. I had the opportunity to visit a program a little earlier this week that takes low-income kids. Some of their kids come from homeless families, and they provide them with an incredible array of educational and health opportunities, and this is an idea that I'd love to see replicated across the city. But even just for everyday working people, $1,700 a month is a lot of money, and so we have to make sure that this is something that's doable for people.
D.C. is seeking a new schools chancellor as Kaya Henderson steps down. Schools in D.C. have improved to the point that there's a campaign to catch out-of-state parents who fraudulently enroll their kids in D.C. public schools. So what does DCPS need now, in your view? More of the same, or a new vision?
We need to we need to have a new chancellor that is going to be committed to working closely with communities and with the council. The grievance that I've heard from families across the city is that they have not felt that DCPS is listening to them and what they believe is necessary for their kids and their communities, and we want to make sure we have that, because right now in the district's history we have more parents than in probably a very long time who want to send their kids to their neighborhood public schools. But those parents will only stay and will only send their kids to those schools if they believe that DCPS is working with them to achieve that upward trajectory that they want to see for their kids.
800-433-8850. Our guest is Robert White. He is the newest member of the D.C. Council. He is a Democrat, voted into the post this morning by the D.C. Democratic State Committee. According to a report out this week, overall crime in our region is down more than 25% over the past decade, but homicides reached their highest level since 2006, and obviously people are concerned about safety. What, in your view, needs to be done?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is forget about the statistics. Nobody in my neighborhood cares that the statistics say that crime is down. I literally have neighbors moving because they feel unsafe, and that cannot be. And so we need to make sure that as our police officers are going into communities, they're not telling people about the stats. They're asking people, do you feel safe? And they're working with us to change course in their approach when it is necessary. And I believe that there are a lot of neighborhoods where that is necessary.
D.C. Police Chief Cathy Lanier signed off yesterday, heading for her new job with the NFL. She starts Monday, but in an interview with the Washington Post, she had some tough words for D.C.'s criminal justice system, describing it as, quoting here, beyond broken. That set off something of a public fight over who is to blame for some of the issues. You worked in the Attorney General's office. What do you think? Is the city's criminal justice system beyond broken? Is it just broken, or what is it?
I think criticism is not what we need. It's for folks to take responsibility. There is a perception in so many community meetings that I went to when I was the community outreach director for the Attorney General's office, where people said, we're being told that your office doesn't prosecute. And I would always, no matter how many times this happened, I would always go back to the office and say, please explain to me again your policies on prosecuting, because I must be missing something. And the reality was I wasn't missing anything. The Office of the Attorney General prosecutes violent crimes really without much exception. I cannot speak, and we can't speak for the U.S. Attorney's Office, but I think that this heightens the understanding that we all have that prosecution is a local responsibility, and I really would like to see that responsibility given to the District of Columbia, so we have someone accountable at the helm for prosecutions of adults.
Well, apparently what Chief Lanier was talking about is what Mayor Muriel Bowser was talking about yesterday. She said she wants to close a loophole which allows criminals to cut off GPS monitoring devices without the penalty of more jail time and really much more. But a sensible change? Do you think that would be a sensible change?
This isn't an issue that I looked at very much. I mean, if you have a GPS device, I would imagine it would be court ordered, and the court order would say when that goes on and off, and there would be a penalty for taking it off to discourage people from doing so. So I can't understand why we would have such a loophole.
But she and Chief Cathy Lanier seemed to agree when Cathy Lanier made the comment about the system being beyond broken, that there is an element of a turnstile, like an element of people who are released from prison into the community without proper orientation, without proper education, maybe released too soon. The community is unaware of it because a lot of the violent crimes are being committed by repeat offenders who have fairly long records of violent crime. What do you think needs to be done about that?
Well, I mean, I think there's no question when we have violent criminals who are repeat offenders, we have to make sure that we are prosecuting them seriously. But in conjunction with that, when we have people who are not committing violent crimes and the information shows that we can put them on a better course such that they do not go into prison, become hardened, and then reoffend in a worse way when they get out, that we can see those better outcomes for people. So this isn't a situation where we can arrest and incarcerate ourselves out of the problem. I think we tried something like that in the 80s and 90s, and we're seeing much of the repercussions now.
Go ahead, Perry.
Who would you like to see replace Lanier? Would you like to see someone of her leadership philosophy, criminal philosophy, or What kind of person would you like to see take her spot?
I loved how community oriented Chief Lanier was. I can say that I've had great relationships with the other chiefs there. I see Chief Missouri all the time in the community, and whether it's someone from inside or outside, I don't have an opinion on that. But I will say that that there are many senior members of our police department that I think are great and would be great for the job.
Here's Jessica in Washington, D.C. Jessica, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Kojo. Thanks for taking my call. And I want to say congratulations to Robert. Mr. White, I've been a supporter of yours for a while. So my concern is affordable housing in the city. When I first moved to D.C., I loved the culture here. It's changed a lot, and I feel a lot of the natives, we have been dealing with higher rent prices and the crisis of not having a lot of affordable housing, and I'd like to know how you're going to approach that.
Thank you, Jessica, for the question and for your support. So affordable housing is a personal issue for me. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian who has seen almost his entire family priced out of this city. And so there are a few things, not to be too long-winded, because I have a lot of policy thoughts on this
Plus
issue.
we only have a minute left.
Look, we're going to enforce the law to make sure that people who are building here do create real affordable housing, and we're going to make sure that we protect the affordable housing that we have. But give me a call in my office. I would love to tell you more about my policy.
When you talk about people who develop here creating affordable housing, there's a lot of questions often about how that is enforced. That is, promises are made and then not delivered on. Will you be an advocate of penalties in those kinds of situations?
Penalties if they're necessary, consistency. If developers know that they have to build affordable housing when they develop here, they will do it. We need to change the understanding so that the people who build the affordable housing are no longer the exception.
Robert White, he is an interim at-large member of the D.C. Council. He's running to occupy that office on a longer basis in November. He's a Democrat. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming.
Perry Stein is our guest analyst today. She's a reporter for the Washington Post. Tom Sherwood will be back in a couple of weeks, but Perry, thank you for stepping up and sitting in.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
That's it for the show today, but remember there's always more happening in person and online. On Monday the 19th, our own Ruth Tam will be talking with author Jeff Chang about his essay collection, We're Gonna Be All Right, Notes on Race and Resegregation. They'll be at Kramer Books in DuPont Circle, and the conversation will get started at 6:30 that evening, so don't miss it. Spend your weekend catching up on past broadcasts at kojoshow.org, and be sure you never miss a show by subscribing via your favorite podcast app. However you listen, be sure to meet us back here Monday at noon. U.S. Senator from Maryland Ben Cardin will join us in studio. And A Nation Engaged, as NPR explores how we create more economic opportunity for Americans. We'll look at the local face of that issue. That's coming up Monday at noon. Until then, enjoy the weekend, and thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nnamdi.